your spitballs with clues. I like it. Okay, Terry McNemar. T.W. Terry McNemar is a humor and short story novelist from Stonewood, West Virginia. His work reflects the humanity, humor, and conscience of everyday life, often in a strong Appalachian voice. It has been featured in Johns Hopkins University Scribble Press, Young Women's Monologues from Contemporary Plays, Mountain Echoes and Traditions, the literary journal of Fairmont State University. Terry is also the author of the novella Ragdoll Angel, an excellent read, the fictional story of a 1952 kidnapping in a West Virginia town. Ladies and gentlemen, Terry McNemar.
Howdy. Can you hear this? I'd like to thank Steve for moderating the panel, and I always enjoy his openings and his deliveries. He's a real pro. Appreciate your help. I grew up in an Irish family. Marie and I were talking about that earlier, and you know, we tend to make fun of things to get through it. You know, it's easier to do that than to. And so when I write humor, it's a real natural, easy thing for me to do. I wrote this. This is a story about a little girl and her mother who go to live with a coal baron as a housekeeper. And they live with an aunt in a chauffeur's room over a garage, and her aunt's taken it upon herself to teach the girl about the ways of the town instead of living out in the middle of nowhere. And so this is the religious aspect of it, this scene from this book, Ragdoll Angel. It's called Religion According to Doreen. Sundays were Doreen's day off. Before Carol's arrival, Doreen spent her Sundays in bed or at the Cloverleaf Inn watching billiards or shuffleboard matches. These days, Doreen and Carol spent Sundays searching for a good church to join. Church. Doreen decided it was a good place to raise a kid. They started out with the Presbyterian church, where her boss spent 6 Sundays each year. Doreen spotted a fellow housekeeper that she despised, and because of her gospel mouth and know-it-all attitude, Doreen and Carol moved on to the Methodist church. Although Doreen had been raised in a Methodist, she considered this congregation a little uppity. Carol thought they were just fine. Every Sunday, new experience. The next Sunday, they were off to yet another church. This time, it was the Pentecostal Light of the Lord Church over on Fox Grape Road.
Amen.
Carol liked the Sunday school and the singing. They used a guitar instead of a piano, and she thought that was pretty neat. The Pentecostal sermon, just like others, started slow, fervent, solemn, kind of quiet-like. Then the pastor's tongue sharpened and he began to peel those sins away like dry skin on a fat onion, layer after layer, just to get to the good. Sitting next to Carol this day was an old bald man with new teeth. At the end of each of the pastor's breathless litanies, the old man yelled, "Amen, brother," and as one might expect, his new teeth whistled just a bit. As the pastor neared the essence of his message, the old man with the whistling teeth became so incensed that only whistling could be heard. Doreen was annoyed. Carol was amused. The old man started to respond again, and Carol noticed that the whistling slowed and stopped. As she watched, wide-eyed, he reached up, pulled out the new teeth, dropped them into his pocket of his jacket, and with increased fervor shouted, "Amen." Well, poor little Carol cracked up. As the toothless Christian turned toward her, she had a direct view of his bald head, gums, spittle, and spirit. She thought this was hilarious. As she giggled uncontrollably, she also tried to apologize to her aunt. I'm sorry," she hiccuped out in between bursts of laughter. Doreen knew Carol well enough to understand. Were they not, after all, cut from the same piece of cloth? Unfortunately, no one else in the church understood. As she watched and giggled, the old man opened his mouth a bit wider and cocked his head to the side, like a confused dog. With that, the hapless child lost her last shred of control. Carol's high-pitched laughter mixed with the apology blended together in a cacophony of ecclesiastical madness. It was at that precise moment that old Baldy knew in his heart that the child was speaking in tongues. only thing he knew to do. He began to interpret. He reached out with a shaking hand and grabbed Carol's arm and looking toward the heavens began to incantate. Speak through me and this child, sweet Jesus. Carol blew yet another cork. In the middle of her third attempt to apologize to her aunt, Doreen finally understood what Carol was trying to say. She was in dire need of a restroom. After a few moments, Doreen was able to wrestle Carol's arm away from the old-timer in mid-translation and hurry Carol toward the ladies' room. Still shouting apologies mixed with high-pitched laughter, Carol's tears streamed down her cheeks like small rivers. As they passed through the church, everyone wanted to touch the blessed child. Many closed their eyes to ponder Carol's cries as they echoed through the old wooden church. Some repeated them. The pastor knew it was a prophecy. The church was filled with joy, awe, and elation. When she heard the pastor repeat and chant Carol's phrase, Doreen was filled with dread. Gotta pee, gotta pee. Carol hailed as they passed down the aisle, out the door, and until they reached the outhouse beside the church. On the way home, they remained silent except for a few residual giggles from Carol. When Doreen laughed, she turned toward the window so the child wouldn't see her. And as they pulled into the driveway, Carol said, "When are we going back there?" "We'll go to the Pentecostal church when things are really bad." In the kitchen, Helen asked, "How was it?" Carol grabbed the lapel of her jacket with one hand, raised the other toward heaven, and in a fervent dialect she had heard that morning proclaimed, "Friends and neighbors, I come forward today to share something with you, and that something is Jesus." "There'll be no more of that, young lady," said Helen. After Carol went to change her clothes, Helen looked at Doreen and asked, "Where did she get this stuff?" Doreen shrugged as she reached under the sink for the bottle.
Thank you, Terry. And last but not least, Karin Fuller. Karin is a lifestyle columnist for the Charleston Gazette. First began writing in 1997, shortly after the birth of her best source of material, her daughter Celeste. Some of you were here, and we got to meet and see Celeste. In the years since, Karin's columns have always been selected as one of the top 3 in each year by the West Virginia Press Association. But in 2003, she was awarded first place general interest in the USA by the National Society of Newspaper Columnists. Along with her columns, Karin's stories have appeared in such publications as Woman's World, Appalachian Heritage, Front Porch, Atlanta Baby, and Family Circle. Ladies and gentlemen, Karin Fuller. Now there's a catch to reading her material. You see, Karin and I had a bet, and I lost. And the deal was that I would read whatever she brought today. I am nervous. And should have known better. It sounds like our bet. The title of this is I Should Have Known Better. Let's see how this goes. I should have known better, but it was my day off. A mental health day. A day intended for bumming with Mom. I didn't want to wear makeup and fix my hair. Didn't want to wear clothes unless they were comfortable. It was a day off from everything, including primping. So, ignoring Mom's warning about what was certain to happen if I went out with hair untamed and naked face in my faded blue sweatshirt and baggy butt jeans, I ventured forth. It was Friday, I reasoned. Everyone would be in school or at work. One guess, what happened? Other than organized reunions, I've rarely run into former classmates of mine until that particular Friday. That is, when I ran into 5. 5 who probably think life must have been hard on poor Karin these last 3 years. Oh, but it didn't stop there. I also ran into 2 former co-workers, 1 ex-boss, 2 neighbors, and a couple from church. It was almost as bad as the time that I ran to the store during lunch hour for the sole purpose of buying some good setup. Feminine protection product. I've always always been thrifty, so when I saw a big box of protection for nearly the same price as the discreet size, I went for it. I want to emphasize the box wasn't just big. It was huge. A case. A huge turquoise case with the brand name written on all sides in letters so large that they could be read blocks away. I had to carry it with both hands. It was awkward, but I didn't mind. I was saving money. One guess what happened. I was heading for checkout, trying to look cool, while carrying enough tightly tubed cotton to protect the Rockettes for a year. I like that so much I might read it again. When I heard someone call out my name. It was Greg, my first boyfriend. I glanced madly about, searching the surrounding racks for somewhere to ditch the box, but it was too late. So there we stood, awkwardly trying to make conversation while pretending the giant blue box didn't exist. Still, that wasn't as bad as the time I was talking with the cashier while he rang up my groceries. I don't remember the conversation, just that it was funny and I was enjoying myself. I wish I could block out what happened next. I pulled out my checkbook, was digging through my purse, when my hand came upon what I assumed was my pen. It was long, cylindrical, smooth, but it wouldn't write. I thought it was just out of ink. Until I saw the look of horror on the cashier's face. One guess what happened. It wasn't a pen I pulled from my purse. Never make a bet with this woman.